I'm Matthew Woods, host of Leading Out of the Woods, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Live. I am excited to be here with you all on this beautiful, sunny Saturday morning here in Texas. Hopefully, wherever you are joining us from, it is a great start to your day. And as always, thank you so much, no matter where you are in the world, wherever it is that you're joining us, for making us part of your day. I really appreciate all the likes, shares, the follows, all the support. Thank you so much for all the emails, the reviews. You guys have been great. And you know what we do, that we do this, for our passion for education. So again, thank you as always from the bottom of my heart for all of that support. And today I am really excited because I have an amazing guest. This is a great way. I mean, we connected. I got an email. I was so excited. I was reading like what we would be talking about. And as you know, AI has been the hot topic since December. And as you know, our shows have been, we've been talking about AI from different perspectives, from education leaders, higher ed, in the higher ed space, how we can use it in the classroom. And today, again, we're going to have a wonderful conversation with Nicole Bjornison, who is joining us from the East Coast. Nicole, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I wish I could say it's sunny here, but it's kind of gray and rainy. I'm in New York, and hopefully we'll get some nicer weather soon.
Yes, hopefully as the summer gets started and all that good stuff. So yeah, as you guys get ready to go on break as well. So again, thank you so much, Nicole, for being here. And I'm excited about today's topic because again, I know that you have already been doing some work with AI and implementing it into the classrooms. And right now in the warm-up chat, I just got so excited about what you and your district and within your school are planning on doing and planning, kind of to get ahead, as far as what is happening. But before we get into that, Nicole, as everybody that is a guest on My Ed Tech Life, I liken them to a superhero. And as we know, superheroes all have origin stories. So, Nicole, can you please share a little bit about your education journey and how you, got into this space and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I'd love to. So as a child, I grew up in a very multicultural home. I always loved learning languages and exploring different cultures. So that kind of drove me to become a language teacher. I currently teach Spanish, and I have taken my love of what I love about teaching Spanish is the ability to take, my love of tech and integrate it, and really be able to teach and immerse my students into the culture. So I currently teach at Deer Park High School. I have taught at Island Trees before, and I am in a master's program and anticipating getting my master's degree this summer. And then I'll be starting an admin cohort, which will eventually lead into a doctoral program, which is very exciting. I know we were talking a little bit about that, and just, seeing if the doctoral program will end up leading into a dissertation or not, which I'm hoping it won't, but we'll see. I'm very active in my world language community. I serve on, I have presented at ACTFL, NYSAFELT, NECTFL, LILT, all language organizations. I was published last summer for ACTFL's The Language Educator, where I wrote about differentiated instruction with my colleague Dina Panone. I also have been named a Leader of Tomorrow by my New York State language organization, NYSAFELT, where we're working on projects to help implement the new language standards for world language teachers in New York. And I have been awarded by my school district twice, honored by the Board of Education for my dedication to the district. So I'm really passionate about what I do. I care about my students, and I also serve as an advisor for the Spanish Honor Society, French Honor Society, and I recently founded the Latinx Student Association with my colleague Julissa Larkin. So very involved, and I care a lot about my students. And this is what kind of brought me here today to talk about how we can help educators and students do better for their kids.
Excellent. And oh my gosh, with everything that you do, and thank you so much. I mean, you can really, just tell the passion that you have for education based on everything that you just listed and the work that you're doing. And so I'm really excited to hear also how you kind of got into AI. We'll start off a little bit about that. And then, maybe sharing some best practices. I know you said you're working in your language teacher, so this is very interesting and a nice insight, to hear from somebody in language how they are implementing AI. Because as you know, a lot of times we've had here, the creators of certain apps, and I'm sure that they would love to hear how you're implementing this into your classroom. So let's start right now with how did you first hear about AI or maybe Chat GPT, and what were your first thoughts and impressions about it?
So this is actually a funny story. I love to cook, and I had my best friends over for a dinner party, and my friend who works in SEO in New York City was sharing that her company is using this amazing app called ChatGPT, and this was, I think, in November. And I was like, "What is this?" I didn't hear about it. I'm not really on Snapchat or other things, so I don't know. I think I had heard musings of it, but she was like, "This is amazing." She's like, and she pulled it up and said, "Write a beautiful poem about Nicole and how amazing she cooks and all this other nonsense." And it generated it in real time in less than 10 seconds, and I was amazed. So then immediately I started thinking, how can I use this myself for productivity or whatever else? So then, of course, the rest of the night, the dinner party was over, and I was just putting in prompts and just absolutely amazed with the output and just how quick it was. So, since then, AI has become my secretary. I didn't know that as a teacher we could have secretaries, but this is just, it's absolutely incredible. And I'd love to talk about just all the ways that I've used it, from productivity to, lesson planning to everything else. So I would start with the fact that I started using it to help me with as far as secretarial things, like reading emails or writing emails. Sometimes we as teachers we deal with tough situations. Whether it's, I could give an instance of a cheating situation where I gave an online quiz on Google Forms. GoGuardian is my best friend, and it's an app where you can see the students' screens in real time. And of course, I saw a student logging out of the Google form and going onto Google Translate and copying one of the questions in my Google form. So, with GoGuardian, you can kind of type to them and say, you're not supposed to do that. But unfortunately, he kept doing it. So I screenshotted it, and now I had to do the next step, which is contact home and let them know that unfortunately the quiz would be a 0 because of the cheating. That's a hard email to write because this is a good kid. I know this kid, the student. Unfortunately, he made a wrong decision, and actions have consequences, and we have to teach them these skills. So I asked ChatGPT. I said, please write a nice email to a student's parent explaining, and then I detailed the situation and said, please write it in a nice way with a nice tone. And it generated the most beautiful email in 30 seconds, which would have taken me, probably an hour to write, because you want to make sure the tone and everything is nice. So I would say I started it with helping me generate examples that I can use. And of course, it needs to be tweaked a bit. It'll sound a little, but you can also, put in prompts to say, use this sort of tone, or you make it sound more professional. So yeah, I think emails is the first thing that blew my mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, one thing that you mentioned too, and thank you so much, Sophie, for joining us and for your comment. Absolutely agree. Yeah, use it to write emails now, always. Same here. One of the things that you mentioned, Nicole, is just great. Number one, you heard about it. Number two, you started playing around with it. you immersed yourself in it, you found the value now in what you can do, um, within your workspace. And like you said, helping you with some of those tasks that normally do take a long time. Because as you know, and I agree with you, being in the classroom for 11 years and sometimes having to have those tough conversations or having to send, you know, emails, maybe not the best situation happening, and you have to explain to parents, you can spend minutes or even hours, just because you're absolutely right, having to make sure that you write the right tone, making sure that you're not, I guess, making the situation a little bit more difficult. So this is great, and it's a great tool, and I bet that time that you save in writing this emails can definitely be used and moved over and shifted to things that are more related to, of course, your curriculum or your lessons and so on. So tell us a little bit more now about your progression, because working as a language teacher, now you saw the potential with the emails, and then now I want to hear how you started implementing it within your classroom setting and within your curriculum.
Yeah, so from there, aside from using it for more administrative tasks, I used it to help me. So for language, I use a teaching method called comprehensible input, which essentially means that students should understand what the content they're being delivered, which is really different from traditional language teaching, which is more, grammar drills or vocab lists. So that planning time it takes a long time. Generating stories that are at students' reading levels, and then generating questions and fill in the blanks, and parallel stories to the stories that I originally created for them to interpret. So originally this would take me my whole weekend to prep lessons like this, whereas now I can say, let's say I want to focus on travel. I can tell ChatGPT to create a really interesting story about a boy that travels to Peru and visits Machu Picchu and gets to tour the Nazca lines and gets to eat cuy, which is a baked guinea pig. And, just I can put in all these fun things, but I can say, make it a fun story and include, comical elements, and make it have a surprise ending. And, it does take a few tries. I'll put it in, then I'll have to modify the prompt. But I'm sure, as you've discussed on this, I've heard, from several times on this podcast, the product is only as good as what's inputted and the prompt. So, really getting to work with your prompts and making sure that they're as specific as you can. I think that's really been something that I've worked on. But, what comes out is great, and it's a great skeleton, and you can edit it. And, in the beginning, I can say it got better. In the beginning, I got a lot of advanced Spanish, and, you have to play around with how you can say, how you can level it. So I've used prompts such as, make it able to be interpreted by a second grader, or, use less vocabulary like this, or you can say use specific expressions such as, the Super 7 verbs, and then list them. So it's just been a huge time saver as far as creating content for my kids.
No, I absolutely love it. And I agree with you how this tool, and mind you, I've tried it myself too, because what I want to do also is, like, since Spanish is my first language, when I've been blogging, it's normally just been English, English, English. And I was like, well, I want to reach out to, the Spanish community, and so what I've been able to do and use ChatGPT is to help me translate the blog post. And I must say that it does an amazing job at translating. And then, of course, with the prompts and so on, it really gets a lot better. And a lot of people say, oh, well, it's too easy, or maybe it's like, oh, that's cheating. But I think, with what I'm hearing you say, and what my experience is too as well, is we ourselves have to be very good at putting in that input and being very specific. So it's not just like, oh, here, create that story, or hey, just translate this blog. but in a way it's like, okay, I need you to translate this blog into Spanish with this tone. And that's the same thing that you're describing is the same thing that I have to do in order for it to come out in such a way where, it's easy to understand and it's easy to read. And then just reading through the translation, it helps me to also to go back and make any edits. So the time that I'm saving though is something that is key. And so right now that you're describing, your work, I want to ask you from the teacher standpoint, and this is me before ChatGPT, 11 years in the classroom was staying at work till about 6:30, sometimes 7, and then on Fridays I'll even just stay till like 7:30, just because I want to get ready for Monday and making copies and doing the lessons and creating lessons. And man, that was overwhelming, and then of course you've got your stack of papers you've got to grade. So I want to ask you, how has this and you implementing this in your classroom, not only for yourself as far as your teaching assistant, working with emails, and of course being able to generate stories and creating some of the flow for you, how has this helped you, in comparison to the way you used to do things prior to Chat GPT? Tell me a little bit about that.
So, as you heard, I'm so involved and I am working on so many projects, whether it's my grad school or, the clubs I'm involved in, or just content creation and meeting these new standards in our state. So really it's freed up my time so that I can dedicate more time to other projects that actually serve my students. So instead of, like I mentioned, lesson planning all weekend, and creating these things, and then the lesson planning itself, which we still have to do, you can put all that stuff in, and it just really is such a time saver. And I can just really honestly say it has completely changed my life. It really, for anything, and it doesn't have to just be teaching, it could be anything personally as well. Like, helping to write thank yous, or, writing congratulation posts, and anything else, even social media, generating social media posts. Sometimes I can get a little anxious about posting things, but really asking ChatGPT, how can I relay this new product that I created for Teachers Pay Teachers, and create an Instagram post promoting it. These are all just really awesome time savers that have just freed up so much more time.
Yeah. No, and one of the things there too, and of course the talk has been teacher burnout,
Yes.
and this has been, of course, nobody really talked about it too much prior to pandemic, and of course school shutting down, and then of course we just came into this new era of like, wow, it just seemed like everything was magnified 1,000 times plus, and just now seeing like, whoa, our system is not quite what we thought it was, or maybe people just became more vocal, and then of course coming back. And it's hard to see those things where we see some wonderful teachers, wonderful educators that are passionate and were passionate about coming into education. And then you're seeing them, before they used to say, oh, it's like, I guess the teacher expectancy was like 5 years, and now it's moving down to 3. And then who knows what it will be in the future. But I agree that we cannot dismiss a tech like this that can help us. And one of the things that I always tell my teachers, and I try to be very direct with the platforms that we use, and direct with my teachers, and letting them know, look, I know that this may seem like we're adding something else to your plate. However, always explaining to them like, this is what it can actually remove, and this is how it can help your workflow, because I have always been a proponent of giving teachers time back, and I always, start my PDs with this. I know can get you at least maybe 10
Yeah.
minutes back in your day. And I always say, even if you just want to sit there with the lights off and just decompress and that's it, if I can get you those 10 minutes back, that is so valuable. And like you said, for yourself, even that quality of life, because you are so involved with your students, and of course the extracurricular clubs, and of course presenting, but
Mhm.
all for the greater good of your students. Now you can really focus on that. And I
And
absolutely love
I
that.
love it. And I love it. I love being involved, and that's what I want to do, So having this just time back is essential. But I want to share, just even now with prepping them for finals, giving them I mentioned parallel text. So in the world language community, parallel text means, a story and then giving them a story that's very similar, like a skeleton, and having them interpret that, because the more exposure they get to the same language, the more they're able to reproduce it. So, helping me generate those kind of things, but even helping me generate review activities. They take what's called the FLAX exam as their state exam. So it has short readings and long readings. So helping me, I'll just go into ChatGPT and say, write a short article on ecotourism in, Puerto Rico, and generate 5 multiple choice questions. Of course, it requires you to go back and check it, but it just really is such a time saver. And we haven't even discussed grading yet, which is a whole other fun thing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry to interject there, but yeah, we'll definitely lead into that. I definitely want to talk about that. But before we do that too, now I want to ask about your students right now, and I want to ask, what grade level is it that you are currently teaching?
9th and 10th.
9th and 10th. So I want to ask, what has been the reaction of the students? Do the students know about ChatGPT? Have they been using it? Do they know that you use it? So let us know a little bit about that environment, because this is the first time that I'm speaking with a classroom practitioner that is using it and implementing it, and especially in a language classroom. So tell me a little bit about that environment and, maybe the students' reactions and how this is working out for them.
Yeah, so I would say it's a mixture. Some students know about ChatGPT, but they all know about the AI Snapchat bot. I don't know if that's the exact name, but that's kind of their ChatGPT, where they're able to talk to that bot, and I think they generate a lot of their essays that they might try to cheat on with that. But as far as if they know that I'm using it, I've talked about how I like to use it for productivity. I don't necessarily tell them that I use it to generate their content. But I think it's a conversation that's worth having once it's used more. I do have some students that are older in my honor societies that have used it for other things. One even told me that, she had used it to generate a speech for an honor society induction. So, they're using it for productivity as well. I'm sure she had to tweak it a little bit, but the speech was great.
Excellent. Now, what about the grading component now? Because I know, like for myself, and we were talking a little bit about this too in the pre-chat, and going back again, I'm really dating myself here. I mean, back in the classroom, and this was about 6 years ago when I was last in the classroom, but, just the stacks and stacks and stacks of papers, having to grade and so on. And it was just really ominous. And then, of course, now with everything being digital and, being able to submit your work, whether it's through Google Doc or any other LMS, how have you been able to use the power of ChatGPT to help you with your grading process? I would love to hear that.
Yeah. So when you think about, learning a language, you really don't, so Google Forms, when that came out, that was awesome because it was an auto grading service, kind of like a Scantron or anything else, but it was just so easy. So, as teachers, we're always looking for easier ways to give feedback quickly to students, because if we want to assess them on key skills like writing. However, that takes a long time. If you have 150 students, you have 150 writings to grade. Yeah, it's essential for them to practice that skill, I would say daily. And, having them practice it but not giving them feedback isn't the best thing. So now with ChatGPT, you can have students write an essay and, on a product like Canva, and copy it into ChatGPT and give it specific things to look for. Have it look for comprehensibility, whatever target structures you're looking for. Let's say you really wanted it to just look for, past tense. So you can say, really look for the preterite and uses of it. And it just generates amazing feedback in 30 seconds. Something that would have taken me at least 5 minutes or more per student, maybe 10. It's generating it in 30 seconds. And I'm able to right away give that feedback to the students, tweak it a little bit. Because as we were discussing, it kind of comes back a little harsh sometimes. Like your writing is okay, but we don't want to give a student that. Here are some ways to improve. But really, like in the past, for productivity purposes, I've created checklists. This is what you need to work on, just so that I didn't have to write it out every time. But now this is written feedback, detailed written feedback that students can look at and use for a way to improve their fluency.
And that's one thing that I do love. And my experience through this is, well, again, I'm not in the classroom currently serving as an instructional technologist, so I don't work with, students submitting anything. However, I did share with you the great way that, in a way, I was kind of grading myself based on a rubric. And so with my doctoral class, and I shout out to Dr. Corbet and, the doctoral program, because they're really just doing great in adopting and the possibilities more AI into their coursework. But what I did is I took my rubric for my class. I just put it straight into ChatGPT and gave it some clear instructions as far as how I wanted it to act, what I needed for it to do. And so based on that rubric, I was putting in each section of the paper that I had written, and it was giving me just really crucial and critical feedback in order for me to maximize the points for my writing. And it was just wonderful. So, I mean, as a teacher, I can definitely see this also being very specific with your rubric, like you mentioned, and being able to input the student writing or the assignment, whatever it may be, and then ChatGPT helping you out, giving that meaningful feedback. And one thing that I love too is that as an educator prior to this, many times we don't give feedback at all to our students. We give the letter grade or we just give the number. But what I recall and what I've seen is, students just take that worksheet and it's an 80, it's a 90, whatever. I just shove it in my backpack into that abyss where everything gets lost. And we don't give enough feedback because it takes up a lot of time to be able to give feedback. Then, of course, you've got digital tools that, now you can go ahead and record some feedback. You can go ahead and make some notes.
Love Mote. Mote is great for that.
Yeah, and so we've got that kind of technology too. I know Kami, I give teacher feedback through Kami too, because I'm able to do voice notes and record my actual face and then just go ahead and give them feedback. But what I love though is that I can go ahead and put their writing in here, get that feedback, and then you give it back to them. And it's so precise, and what it needs for them to do, how they can improve, and talk about saving time. And really, I honestly feel that we're serving our students a lot better with this tool than before, where you just give them the 80 and they're like, why? Well, and we get overwhelmed because it's like, now I have to explain this all over. And it can be tough, and especially with 30 kids, 32 kids, depending on the district size, that you're at, it could be a little bit overwhelming. But having this assistant or co-teacher that ChatGPT can be wonderful.
Yeah, it's really life-changing. And, like we're saying, the importance of giving feedback regularly and quickly. Let's say you gave a test last week on Monday. It could, if you have 150 students, it can take, a week or two to really do your best for each student and correct it and give that feedback. So having that be able to be in real time, and you just sit down 30 minutes, copy and paste, look at the feedback, give it back. I mean, it's really a game changer.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that, every single bit of it. So now let's talk a little bit here, because in the pre-chat also, and I was so excited to hear this because I haven't heard too much, from a lot of districts at this point, and not even here locally yet from some of my friends that they're having these conversations. But you actually mentioned to me that you all have a committee now that is getting together to discuss, the possibilities of implementing ChatGPT, and you're having those conversations with stakeholders. So, Nicole, please walk us through that. I would love for you to share, if you can, like who is involved in those conversations, and how did this committee come about? What was who was the person that started it, because I think that this could be very helpful for a lot of other educators like yourself, myself, to know who it is that we need to involve or how we can get the conversation started, because this is something that is here and it's only going to get better each day that goes by. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's one of my district administrators, Jay Murphy. He is the instructional technology district administrator. And about a month or two ago, he put out a survey asking for interest in joining a committee involving AI. So immediately I was so excited and I joined, and we had our meeting a few weeks ago. And it was really cool to see who joined. There were it was open to anyone from the district, and teachers, from elementary school to high school joined, and there were administrators as well. So it was a really, really cool opportunity that he provided us to just discuss. He kind of actually started it very interesting with what are our fears about AI, and transitioning from that. And it was just the opportunity to have an open conversation where we were able to share our feelings about it. And it was really cool to hear from English teachers, science teachers, language teachers like myself, elementary school teachers, administrators, and not everyone was thrilled about it. Not everyone had shared the same perspective I did, but there were some valid concerns raised. I think the purpose of our committee is to eventually come up with guidelines for our district for how we will implement it. And really, I guess, it was, are we a fan of it? Are we not? And then why? That was really the purpose of that first meeting. So I'd love to talk about, some of the things that were said, the points that were brought up.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to talk about that because, again, I feel that when this came out, and it was like November, December, everybody was on break, and then we're coming in. And of course, you've got the early adopters, teachers that are using this and so on. But a lot of the conversation, at least here in our area, kind of falls by the wayside because from January to May, it's state testing season and everything is just focused on, curriculum and finishing everything, preparing for the test. And so sometimes those conversations, they do fall by the wayside and they don't pick up again till the summer or early fall before we get into the school year. So let us know a little bit about, what it is that you're planning and doing, because this can definitely be very useful, not only to myself, but to all our listeners here for their districts.
I can say, shout out to our district, Deer Park, for having the first, from my knowledge, committee on Long Island discussing these important things. So that's a really awesome initiative that Jay Murphy brought about. And I feel really honored to be a part of it because, like I said, I even reached out to my home district and, they're very well known, Locust Valley. And, to my understanding, they don't have a policy yet. So it's really cool to be part of, the first district that is going to be implementing this. But, the conversations were tough. There were people that were adamant to ban it and to, that are against ChatGPT for valid reasons. They say that a lot of our, in general, students' writing is poor, that they're not able to do basic skills like that. So how are they now going to, why should they now have this tool that's just going to make it easier for them when they lack those basic skills? There were also, I'll start with the concerns first. So there were also concerns regarding teacher preparation, which is a valid point, saying that there are teachers that haven't even heard of this. And, how are we going to just allow this program in the district when, there are several teachers that haven't heard of it or, don't know what it is or how to use it. And so there were talks about, okay, so then, after the concerns, well, how can we address these concerns? Well, maybe there needs to be some teacher preparation, professional developments offered. I was actually asked to be a tech mentor for our district next year. So those are kind of some things I'll probably bring up in our meetings. But, as far as addressing whether, kids with those lacking those basic skills and now implementing ChatGPT, I'm a big fan of mixing things. I don't think that it should be all ChatGPT. My Spanish class will not be, Spanish with ChatGPT. No, it's using it when it makes sense. Just like when Google Translate came out, I'm sure there were a lot of Spanish teachers in panic. Now they're never going to write an essay themselves again. Well, then, you have to go back to handwriting for some things. So I do that anyway. I think there's a nice mix of both. But what I think we all kind of came to a consensus on is ChatGPT is here. It is being used in workspaces. Like I mentioned, my friend that works in SEO, they use it on a regular basis for, generating content for their blogs, or just being able to code websites and whatever else. So I think that not implementing it or teaching our kids the skills for creating good prompts is going to put them at a disadvantage when they graduate. And our goal as educators is to create, make these students college and career ready. So I think, we all came to the consensus for the most part that, it is going to be implemented. We just have to come up with ways to do it.
Yeah. For myself, the main concern is also, like we talked about, the age, the age restrictions. At first, it was 18, then they knocked it down to 13. And so my concern is, okay, what are districts doing to be very, cautious as far as the usage of this? Is it just going to be for 13 and up? Is it just going to be for teachers? Is it going to be for everybody that is 13 and up, but making sure that you do have written parental consent, because that's something that you should have, and I know that every district, or at least most districts, at the beginning of the year, they have the tech form that the parent signs stating that, the students are allowed to have all that tech. But I think this is a little different. I know a lot of the other platforms, their COPA, FERPA, and all that compliance and all that good stuff. So that's really my concern. So I'm kind of in the middle. Like I love the idea. And as an educator, being able to use this, of course, I'm all for also being able to teach students how to use this, because it is the future of work. I know that we talked about, well, what if this is all they're going to use and they're writing, but we talked a little bit about pre-chat and my thoughts on this, not being in the classroom anymore, but even just talking about dissertation. I've been pushing hard, my professor saying, like, why do I need to write 100+ page paper to prove to you that I know what I'm talking about? When can I do it, via video? Can I do it, through podcast? Can I do it through another presentation and explain to you and talk to you about it in multiple ways and present it to you, rather than just me writing? Because I know a lot of people will say, well, how do I know that this just wasn't written through ChatGPT? My question too is, like, are we grading for stamina, or are we grading, for actual knowledge, that you do know? So those are just the things to think about too, as well. And as those conversations are had. But I am excited and delighted to hear that your district is, and your team here that you talked about, is having these conversations, because they are very important. So thank you so much for sharing that. And again, I agree with you too. This is the future of work. I mean, this again has been a game changer for me as far as the flow of my work, personal work, and even my professional work, because it's just easy to, just create what it is that I need, and it becomes that personal assistant. So that way we can focus on what is really important and work on those things. So that's been definitely very helpful. Well, Nicole, this has just been amazing. I really appreciate you sharing and coming on here and letting us know your experience, the way that you found ChatGPT, how you've been using it, how the district is coming up with a team and having these conversations, and what is going to be allowed, and involving important stakeholders in there. So it's great. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Nicole, if you can share with our audience, I know I've been sharing the links throughout the conversation and everything, but please let us know, if any of our audience members would love to connect with you and maybe ask you even more questions, or possibly even invite you on their podcast too as well, so you can share. Please let us know how they may be able to connect with you.
Yeah, I will. Can I type in the chat my email?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I think I have it here. I will go ahead and copy and paste it. And so, guys, if you check the chat here, you can go ahead and connect with Nicole here.
Or even send me a DM on Instagram. I'm available, and I would love to talk to you about how you use it. we're actually talking about like ethics even. I know that something I would like to do once we have permission from the committee is to have students have conversations with ChatGPT and even possibly simulate famous people that we learn about and, interview them. But that is, a discussion for morals and ethics. But we'll see what our committee comes up with and our policies. So it'll be an interesting conversation to hopefully have again later down the line.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just really excited about that. And again, we are about to wrap up. And of course, this is the last segment of the show. And Nicole, if you're familiar with the show, we always end the show with 3 questions for our guests. And what I want to do here before I get into that, this episode today is actually sponsored by Content Clips. So please make sure that you check out Content Clips, because if you are a podcaster like myself, you know that creating clips and sound bites for these videos can definitely take some time. So please make sure that you check out Content Clips, and please make sure that your friend Fonz, let them know that your friend Fonz sent you, and then that way they can go ahead and just push you right through. And again, this is a great way for you to be able to create your clips, putting them out on all socials, and of course saving you some time. So thank you so much, Content Clips. All right, so Nicole, this is your very first question. As you know, every superhero has a weakness. And in this case, we know Superman, his weakness was kryptonite. So anytime he came around kryptonite, it was just like, it would just weaken him. So I want to ask you, in the current state of education, whether it's AI or just anything else, but in the current state of education, what would you say is your current kryptonite?
I would say when I get distracted, like I get distracted really easily, and I would say possibly scrolling through hours and hours of TikToks of other people doing really, really awesome things. Just even like seeing like puppets being used or this or that. So I always kind of get sidetracked and say, well, I want to try this in my classroom, and then completely go away from whatever else I was doing. So I think just the availability of so much information out there that it can kind of get overwhelming, and you almost feel like you have to take it all on. So I would say it would be that.
All right. Good answer. All right. Question number 2 is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
It's a funny question. I think it would be, after this podcast, it would be ChatGPT, use it. It's a time saver, but I don't know. Maybe my dogs. I love my dogs. I think they're the best. Their names are Gunnar and Rosie. Maybe like an advocacy for pit bulls. They're actually pit bulls, and people get really up in arms about pit bulls and how they're apparently dangerous and this and that, but they're the biggest mushes ever. So I think it would be that.
I love it. I agree with you. I had a friend of mine, very close friend, who did the pit bull's name is Conrad, and Conrad, huge pit bull, one of the sweetest dogs I have ever met in my life. I mean, you walk in and he was just jumping up and down for joy, and he was just awesome. So I definitely agree with you on that. So that'd be a great billboard. All right. My last question for you, Nicole, is, if you can turn any of your hobbies into a profession, what hobby might that be?
Oh, I love to cook, and I actually had gone between teaching or becoming a chef, but I had heard that chef life is extremely stressful and that they have extremely late hours. So I think if I could turn my hobby of cooking into a profession, I would, as long as the hours were different.
There you go. All right. That would be great. So, well, maybe like, I know that there's like private chefs that maybe like sometimes you get hired to go just like, hey, I just need my lunches, or I just need dinners or something like that. And it's just, being able to work with your schedule. And then you imagine being able to travel around the world and just say, hey, I want to hire you to just come and do my lunch. And then, I'm going to fly you in just to do lunches. I think that would be amazing.
Awesome.
So that would be awesome. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing your story. And I know that we talked about having a follow-up show too as well, maybe as as the year slowly starts for us here in August. So maybe following up, and then I would love to hear what other plans your committee has come up with, and and then of course your plans for the following year, and things that you learned from this year that you can go ahead and change to use for next year and so on. So I'm definitely excited for that. We'll definitely schedule that. So thank you so much. I want to thank Sophie also, who joined us in the chat also as well. Thank you. And we had Diana Eckstein also, who joined us on LinkedIn. I really appreciate you all. And for all of you, my friends, that are going to be catching this on the replay, please make sure that you check out our website at myedtech.live for this amazing episode and the other 207 amazing episodes with amazing educators and creators that you can take knowledge nuggets from and sprinkle them on to what you are already doing great. I really appreciate all the likes, shares, and follows. And if you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 followers there. And please make sure you follow us on all socials at myedtechlife. We would love to connect with you. Shoot us a DM, reach us through our website at myedtech.live. If you're interested on being a guest, please make sure that you connect with us too as well. And if you would love to contribute to our mission of connecting educators and creators one show at a time, please make sure you stop by our merch store where you can go ahead and pick up some amazing caps, some shirts. We've got all sorts of swag there that you can pick up, and all of that goes back to our mission of bringing you some amazing conversations to help all our educators be well informed of anything ed tech, and of course, even having some tough conversations on tough subjects. We're all here for that. We want to make sure that we help everybody in our education space. So thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.